The human shot down a warship. Inside, a woman laid wearing his dog tags. Nathan's finger hovered over the trigger. The unmarked vessel had ignored 3 hails and crossed 2 warning buoys into restricted space. His targeting computer painted it red, tracking algorithms predicting its trajectory straight toward Earth's outer colonies. He fired. The missile streaked through black space, impact blooming white against the vessel's engine core. The ship shuddered, lost thrust, and began its death spiral toward the forest moon below. Nathan watched it fall, already plotting his pursuit vector. Protocol demanded confirmation, visual identification of the wreckage, recovery of any surviving data cores, elimination of threats. He followed it down. The crash site carved a scar across the moon's northern forest, trees splintered and burning in a trail that stretched half a kilometer. Nathan set his fighter down at the edge of the debris field, systems already scanning for life signs and active weapons. Smoke obscured his sensors. He'd have to search on foot. The air tasted of burnt metal and something organic when he cracked his helmet seal. Fire crackled through the wreckage, sending embers spiraling into the twilight sky. He moved carefully through scattered debris, hull plating, shattered equipment, things he couldn't immediately identify. The vessel had broken apart on impact, sections scattered like a child's abandoned toys. Bodies lay among the wreckage, not human. Various species he recognized from Dominion space, and some he didn't. All dead, torn apart by the crash or the initial explosion. Nathan cataloged each one with professional detachment, his weapon ready for anything still moving. The main hull section had come to rest against a cluster of massive trees, bent but not broken. One side had torn open on impact, exposing the interior. Nathan approached cautiously, scanning for movement. Emergency lighting flickered inside, painting everything in intermittent red. He stepped through the tear in the hull. The interior was carnage. Equipment had torn free during the crash, crushing anything in its path. More bodies. These looked like they'd been restrained before impact, still strapped to examination tables or locked in containment cells. A research vessel, then, or a transport for prisoners. The distinction hardly mattered now. Nathan moved deeper, checking each section methodically. His training kept him focused even as part of his mind wondered what this ship had been doing in Earth space, why it had ignored his hails, what cargo was worth dying for. Then he saw her. She was laid out in the debris near what looked like a medical bay, half buried under fallen equipment. Fox-like ears were flattened against her skull, russet fur matted with blood and ash. One arm was pinned beneath a support beam. Her flight suit, if that's what the torn fabric had been, was shredded across her ribs. And around her neck, catching the emergency lighting like a beacon, hung his dog tags. Nathan's weapon clattered to the deck. He was moving before conscious thought caught up, throwing debris aside with desperate strength. The support beam took both hands and leverage from his legs, but he shifted it enough to pull her free. Her arm came away at an angle that made his stomach turn. Sera. Her name came out raw. He pressed fingers to her throat, searching for a pulse he was terrified he wouldn't find. There, faint but steady. She was alive. Nathan's hands shook as he checked her injuries. Broken arm definitely, multiple lacerations, possible internal bleeding from the way she'd been positioned. Concussion likely, but breathing, alive, here. 6 months ago, he'd given her those tags. They'd been in his quarters after a joint training exercise between Earth forces and Dominion intelligence. She'd traced the chain with one finger, curious about the human tradition. "In case you don't come back," she'd asked. "In case I do," he'd answered and fastened them around her neck. 3 days later, she'd left on a deep cover assignment. No contact, no timeline, just a promise to come back when she could. He'd waited 2 months before Commander Parrish delivered the news. Sera Vyn, Dominion intelligence operative, killed in action. No body recovered, mission details classified. Nathan had wanted to demand answers, to rage against the sanitized military speak that reduced her to a casualty report. Instead, he'd returned to his quarters, stared at the empty space where she used to sleep, and felt something vital hollow out inside his chest. Now she was here, wearing his tags, barely breathing in his arms. He gathered her carefully, mindful of her injuries, and lifted. She was lighter than he remembered. too light. Whatever had happened to her in the past 6 months had carved away softness, leaving only lean muscle and barely contained survival instinct. Nathan carried her through the broken hull and across the debris field toward his fighter. Behind him, something in the wreckage groaned and shifted. Secondary explosions rippled through the main section, sending fresh flames clawing into the darkening sky. He didn't look back. His fighter's medical bay was designed for field treatment, nothing more. Nathan laid Sera on the narrow bench and pulled supplies from their magnetic housings. Stabilizer for the arm first, spray seal for the lacerations, diagnostic scanner to check for internal damage. His hands moved with practiced efficiency even as his mind raced through impossible questions. How was she alive? What was she doing on that ship? Why was she still wearing his tags? The scanner beeped results he didn't want to see. Fractured ribs, internal bruising, mild concussion, severe dehydration suggesting weeks of inadequate care, signs of older injuries poorly healed, burn scars on her wrists that looked like restraint marks. Nathan's jaw clenched hard enough to ache. Someone had hurt her, kept her, and she'd been wearing his tags through all of it. He finished treating what he could and covered her with a thermal blanket. Her fox-like ears twitched slightly, responding to sound even unconscious. One of her hands rested near her throat, fingers curled around the chain of his tags, like she'd been holding them when the crash hit. Nathan settled into the pilot's seat, close enough to watch her breathe, and tried to think past the storm of emotion threatening to overwhelm tactical assessment. He needed to report the crash, coordinate recovery, file his incident report. Protocol demanded immediate action. Instead, he reached over and brushed his fingers across her cheek, careful of the bruising. Her fur was softer than he remembered, even matted with blood and ash. "Come on, Sera," he said quietly. "Wake up. I need you to wake up." For long minutes, nothing. Just the quiet hum of his fighter's systems and the distant crackle of burning wreckage. Nathan was reaching for the comm to finally call in support when her eyes fluttered open. Amber eyes unfocused at first, tracking across the unfamiliar ceiling. Then they found him and something shifted. Recognition, relief, and underneath it all, bone-deep exhaustion. Her lips moved. No sound came out. She tried again, voice rough as broken glass. "You shot me down." Nathan's chest constricted. She was awake, she was talking, she was here. "I didn't know you were on it," he said, and even to his own ears his voice sounded wrecked. Her mouth curved into something that might have been a smile if it hadn't been so weak. Her hand found the dog tags at her throat, thumb rubbing across the stamped metal, in a gesture that looked reflexive. Well practiced. "I was counting on that." Before he could process what that meant, her eyes rolled back and she went limp again. Not unconscious, her breathing had evened out into natural sleep, her body finally allowing itself to rest now that some part of her recognized safety. But those last whispered words hung in the air, half warning and half confession. "They're coming. The Kethran. They can't find the data core." Nathan sat vigil while Sera slept, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. Every few minutes he'd check her vitals on the diagnostic scanner. Broken but stable. Alive but stable. The crash site still burned in the distance, visible through his canopy as a dull orange glow. He should call it in. Should report the unmarked vessel, the bodies, the evidence of prisoner transport. Should follow protocol. Instead, he stayed quiet and watched Sera breathe. An hour passed before her eyes opened again. This time they tracked immediately to him, sharp and aware despite the exhaustion. She drew a careful breath, testing her ribs, then lifted her good hand to touch the stabilizer on her broken arm. "Bad." Fractured arm, 3 cracked ribs, mild concussion, extensive bruising. Nathan kept his voice level, plus older injuries, restraint burns, dehydration. Her ears flattened slightly. She looked away, jaw tight. "How long was I out?" "1.5 hours since you first woke. 6 months since I was told you were dead." That brought her eyes back to his. Something raw crossed her face, guilt maybe, but she didn't look away. "I'm sorry." "Don't." The word came out harder than he'd intended. Nathan forced himself to breathe. "Just tell me what happened. Tell me what you were doing on that ship." Sera pushed herself upright slowly, favoring her ribs. Nathan moved to help, but she waved him off. When she was sitting, thermal blanket pooled around her waist, she touched the dog tags at her throat again. That unconscious gesture, like she needed to confirm they were still there. I was on a mission, deep cover, investigating disappearances across multiple systems, specific individuals, specific species, all flagged by Dominion intelligence. What kind of security concerns? The kind that don't submit to hive-mind integration. Her voice was steady, but her tail had curled tight around her leg. The Kethran have been testing individuals for decades, looking for something in our neurology. Most species are vulnerable to their collective consciousness technology, but some aren't. Nathan's stomach dropped. He'd heard rumors about Kethran infiltration, whispers about psychological warfare and mass coordination technology. You're telling me they've been abducting people to test for immunity? Not just abducting, collecting. Sera's hand tightened on the tags. That ship was a transport vessel, taking confirmed immune individuals to a termination facility. Dozens of beings, Nathan, all scheduled for execution because they couldn't be controlled. The crash site suddenly made sense, the bodies strapped to examination tables, the containment cells. You were one of them, he said quietly, one of the specimens. She nodded once, sharp and precise. I infiltrated their collection network 3 months ago, let myself be captured, tested, confirmed as immune. They took everything when they processed me. Weapons, equipment, identification. Her thumb rubbed across his name stamped in the metal. They took these too, kept them in evidence storage. I stole them back 2 weeks ago, wore them as my anchor, my reminder that someone was waiting. Nathan moved before thought caught up, closing the distance and cupping her face in both hands. Her eyes widened, but she didn't pull away. I thought you were dead, he said, voice rough. Parrish told me you were K.E., no body, no details, just gone. That was the cover. Deep cover requires absolute commitment. Her good hand came up to wrap around his wrist, claws pricking gently. I couldn't tell you. Couldn't risk the Kethran discovering our connection and using you as leverage. So you let me grieve. So I kept you safe. Her voice cracked. Nathan, they were testing humans. If they'd known about us, they would have taken you too. The anger bled away, leaving only the ache of 6 months lost and relief. Nathan leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in despite the ash and blood. You're wearing my tags, he said. I never took them off. Not once. Her fingers tightened on his wrist. Every time they strapped me down for testing, I held on to these and remembered what your hands felt like. Nathan kissed her then, careful of her injuries, but desperate. She made a sound low in her throat and kissed him back, her good hand sliding into his hair, claws scratching lightly against his scalp. The tags pressed between them, warm metal over both their hearts. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Sera's pupils were blown wide and her tail had unwound to curve around his calf. I missed you, she whispered, every second of every day. I'm here now, you're here now. He stroked his thumb across her cheekbone. That's what matters. It's not that simple. She pulled back slightly. The data core in that wreckage, it contains everything. Collection schedules, test results, termination orders. If the Kethran recover it before we do, none of this matters. Nathan's tactical mind kicked online. How long do we have? Standard Kethran protocol sends recovery teams within 2 hours. We're already past 1. Her ears swiveled. They'll eliminate all evidence and witnesses. Then we go get the data core. Nathan, I'm barely mobile. Sera watched him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Help me up, I'm coming with you. Sera! Those are my mission parameters, Hunt. Her voice carried an edge now. I've been inside that ship's systems for months. I know exactly where the core is and what fail-safes are in place. You go alone, you'll trigger security protocols. Nathan recognized that look in her eyes. She'd survived months of captivity to reach this point. She wasn't stopping now. Fine, but you're wearing my jacket and staying close. He pulled his flight jacket from its locker and draped it around her shoulders. She wrapped it tight and breathed in like the scent was its own anchor. They armed themselves, his service pistol and a backup, and headed for the airlock. Sera was limping but mobile, her tail swishing for balance as they crossed uneven ground toward the crash site. The wreckage was still burning, but lower now. Nathan kept close to Sera's good side, ready to catch her if she faltered. She led him through the debris field toward a section he hadn't explored. "There," she said, pointing to a collapsed section near engineering. "The data core is integrated into the main computer. We'll need to physically extract it." They climbed through twisted metal, Sera directing him around unstable sections and active fires. The heat was intense, making sweat run down Nathan's back. Inside the collapsed section, emergency lighting flickered across banks of alien technology. Sera moved to what looked like a server array and started working one-handed, her good hand flying across interfaces. "There's encryption and failsafes," she said. "Give me 2 minutes." Nathan took position at the opening, weapon ready, eyes scanning the forest. Somewhere in the distance, he heard a sound that didn't belong. Mechanical, growing closer. "Sera, I hear it." Her hands moved faster. 90 seconds. The mechanical sound resolved into distinct engine signatures, multiple craft, coming from orbit. Nathan's gut clenched. "They're here." 60 seconds. The first Kethran dropship appeared over the tree line, searchlights cutting through smoke, then another, 3 total, moving in formation. Nathan watched them deploy, insectoid figures rappelling down with military precision. "Sera, we need to go." 30 seconds almost. Something beeped. "Got it." She yanked a data core from the server array, glowing with residual power. She shoved it into his jacket pocket and turned. "Now we run." They burst from the collapsed section just as the first Kethran forces reached the perimeter. Nathan fired twice, dropping the nearest one. Sera ran despite her limp, desperate speed overriding pain. Weapons fire stitched the ground near Nathan's feet. He grabbed Sera's good arm and pulled her behind hull plating. More fire. The Kethran were advancing in organized lines. "Your fighter," Sera gasped. "How far?" 200 meters northeast. "Can we make it?" Nathan looked at the advancing forces, at Sera's injuries, at the open ground. The assessment was grim. "Together," he said, meeting her eyes, "we make it together." Her hand found his, lacing their fingers. Claws pricked his palm gently. "Then let's move." They ran through burning wreckage, Sera limping badly now. Nathan kept his hand locked around her good arm, half supporting her weight. Behind them, Kethran weapons fire carved through smoke. Hull plating exploded to their left. Nathan pivoted, putting himself between Sera and the blast. She stumbled, but kept moving. 50 meters, Nathan said. More fire. They dove behind a fallen tree. Sera landed hard and bit back a scream. Nathan returned fire, buying seconds. He grabbed her arm and hauled her up. They broke cover together, sprinting as Kethran forces closed. They hit the airlock at full speed. Nathan threw Sera inside and followed, slapping the seal. The canopy began closing just as the first Kethran reached them. Nathan triggered emergency purge. Compressed air blasted outward. He was in the pilot's seat immediately, hands flying across startup. Sera collapsed into co-pilot position. The fighter's engines screamed. Nathan was already lifting off, rotated and open throttle. Trees blurred past as they climbed. Proximity alarm. 2 Kethran interceptors, rising from the dropships. Sera scanned sensor data despite her injuries. Lighter craft, built for speed. We can outmaneuver if we stay low. Nathan dropped altitude, skimming treetops. The interceptors followed, weapons hot. Missile lock. Nathan rolled hard left, pushing through a gap between trees. The missile streaked past. His second roll took them under a stone arch, belly scraping rock. Where'd you learn to fly like this? Test pilot, we do stupid things for science. Her mouth quirked despite everything. Then another alarm. The interceptors were flanking. Nathan pulled into a climb that grayed his vision, then cut thrust and rotated. He fired twice, catching the nearest interceptor's engine. It tumbled away, trailing smoke. The second broke off, repositioning. "Nathan, the data core," Sera said. "We need to verify what's on it." "Kinda busy." "I can access it from here." She was already working one-handed. "Keep them off us for 2 minutes." Nathan dove toward forest, weaving between terrain while Sera worked. The remaining interceptor pursued, adapting. He killed his engines mid-flight. The fighter dropped like a stone into a canyon. At the last second, he reignited thrust and pulled up. 1 minute. The interceptor appeared above, searching. Nathan held position. The Kethran craft descended cautiously. Nathan waited, then opened fire. His shots tore through its hull. It impacted the canyon wall. Clear. How's the data? Sera's expression had gone still, ears flat. It's all here. Collection schedules spanning 40 years. Test results for thousands. Termination orders. She looked up. Humans are flagged as priority targets. Earth is on the collection schedule. 3 months. His hands tightened on controls. How many? Initial target, 10,000. After testing confirms immunity rates, full planetary protocols activate. We broadcast this. Get it to Earth Command, everyone. If we broadcast, they'll know we have it. They're already coming. At least this way, people can prepare. He set course for the nearest relay. How long? 10 minutes if I strip encryption. She was working. But Nathan, there's something else in my file. Her voice had changed. Nathan glanced over and saw her staring at data, ears pinned flat. What is it? I told you I volunteered. She was still staring. I didn't tell you why. Sera, 3 months ago, Kethran agents grabbed me off a station. I thought it was operational risk. It wasn't. They'd been tracking me for weeks, monitoring my communications, movements, connections. Nathan's stomach dropped. They knew about us. They identified you as a person of interest. High-value target. They were planning to use me as bait to bring you in for collection. The pieces clicked together, so you volunteered before they could use you to get to me. I submitted to their testing. Let them confirm my immunity. Let them process me into transport. She looked at him, amber eyes bright. If I was already in custody, already scheduled for termination, they'd have no reason to come after you. Nathan felt something crack in his chest. She'd let herself be captured, tested, marked for execution, all to keep him safe. You were going to die for me. I was going to die knowing you were safe. Her hand found the dog tags. Wearing these was the only selfish thing I allowed myself. The autopilot held course while Nathan stared at this woman who'd sacrificed everything. And he'd shot her down by accident, pulling her back. I'm not letting you die. Not for me, not for anyone. Nathan, we broadcast this. Expose the Kethran. Give Earth time to prepare. He took her good hand. Then we disappear. Together. Her throat worked. Claws pricked his palm gently. They'll come for us. For Earth. For everyone. Let them come. He squeezed her hand. We face it together, but first we make sure the galaxy knows. She nodded, turned back to her console. Nathan watched her work. Broadcast ready. Once I send this, there's no taking it back. Nathan looked at her, at the tags gleaming at her throat, at the determination despite exhaustion. Send it. Her finger pressed down. The data streamed outward across every frequency, spreading through networks. In moments it would reach Earth Command. In hours, the galaxy would know. They'd started something neither could stop, but they'd started it together. The broadcast spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Nathan watched confirmation pings multiply on his display. Earth Command received it first, then Dominion intelligence hubs, then independent stations across 12 systems. Within minutes, encrypted military channels lit up with emergency protocols. Within an hour, the galaxy would know everything. Response incoming from Earth Command, Sera said, voice hoarse with exhaustion. They're ordering us to the nearest defensive station for immediate debrief. Which one? Outpost Meridian, 6 hours at current speed. Nathan adjusted their course, pushing the fighter toward the coordinates. His shoulder ached where shrapnel had caught him, and Sera looked ready to collapse despite staying upright through determination alone. They needed medical attention, rest, and about a week to process everything. They'd get none of it. The Kethran will respond, Sera said quietly, watching data streams. Once they realize we've exposed their collection program, they'll accelerate their timeline. Earth has 3 months, maybe less now. Then Earth will prepare, Nathan glanced at her, because of what you did, what we did. She touched the dog tags at her throat, that reflexive gesture he'd watched her make a dozen times since pulling her from the wreckage. "I never thought I'd see you again," she said softly. "I'd made peace with dying on that ship, with never getting to tell you." She trailed off, ears flattening slightly. "Tell me what?" "That every moment we had together mattered more than any mission. That wearing your tags kept me sane when they were running tests. That I love you enough to die for you. But I'd rather live with you." Nathan's hands stilled on the controls. She'd never said it before. They'd been too new, too careful with the complications of human and alien, military and intelligence, all the reasons they shouldn't have gotten involved. None of that mattered now. "Come here," he said. Sera unbuckled with her good hand and moved carefully into his lap, mindful of her injuries and the cramped cockpit space. Nathan wrapped one arm around her waist, holding her secure against him, while his other hand stayed on the controls. She fit perfectly there, her back against his chest, her head tucked under his chin. "I thought I lost you," he said into her hair. 6 months of thinking you were dead, 6 months of wishing I'd told you how I felt before you left. Tell me now. I love you. Every stubborn, self-sacrificing, brilliant part of you." He pressed his lips to the top of her head between her ears. "And I'm never letting you go on a suicide mission again." She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and turned enough to kiss him. It was different from the desperate kisses in the wreckage. This was slow, thorough, tasting like promises and futures they might actually get to have. Her claws pricked gently through his flight suit as she held on to him. When they broke apart, both breathing harder, Sera rested her forehead against his. "When we get to Meridian, they're going to separate us, debrief us individually, question my loyalty because I'm not human." "Let them try." Nathan's voice carried an edge. "I'll make it very clear you're with me." "Non-negotiable, Sera. You just saved Earth and probably half the galaxy. They don't get to treat you like an enemy." Her tail curled around his leg, that gesture of trust and connection. "You're going to fight Earth Command for me?" "I'm going to fight anyone who tries to separate us. I just got you back. They can debrief us together or not at all." Despite everything, the injuries, exhaustion, the weight of what they'd unleashed, Sera smiled, genuine and warm and utterly beautiful. "Reckless," she said. "You wore my tags through months of captivity. I think I've earned the right to be reckless for you." They flew in comfortable silence for a while, Sera warm and solid in his arms, the fighter eating up distance between them and Meridian. Nathan's hand rested over hers on the armrest, their fingers laced together. "What happens after the debrief?" Sera asked eventually. "After Earth mobilizes and the galaxy chooses sides?" "We figure it out together. Maybe they'll want us for intelligence work. Maybe we'll be too hot to use and they'll hide us somewhere safe." He squeezed her hand. "Maybe we just disappear and let them deal with the mess while we find somewhere quiet." "You'd do that? Leave Earth to face the Kethran?" "I'd do whatever keeps you alive and with me." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "But I think we both know we won't run. Not when we can help." "No," she agreed softly. "We won't run." The communication console chimed. Sera reached over one-handed to accept the transmission. "This is Outpost Meridian Control. We have your approach vector Hunt. Be advised, Commander Parrish is waiting for you in the landing bay with full security detail." Nathan and Sera exchanged glances. "Acknowledge, Meridian. ETA 5 hours, 40 minutes. The channel closed. Sera shifted in his lap to look at him properly. "Full security detail. They're not taking chances." "Can't blame them. We just exposed a galactic conspiracy and declared war on the Kethran Collective." Nathan's mouth quirked. "We're either heroes or the galaxy's most wanted, maybe both." "As long as we're together," Sera said, touching the tags again. "Together," Nathan agreed. The next hours passed in relative quiet. Sera dozed against him, finally allowing herself to rest. Nathan flew and watched her sleep, one hand holding her secure, the other guiding them toward whatever waited at Meridian. When the station appeared on sensors, Sera woke and moved back to her seat. She looked better for the rest, but still too pale, too injured. The stabilizer on her arm needed professional attention. Her ribs needed proper treatment. "Ready?" Nathan asked as they approached the docking bay. Sera straightened in her seat, ears forward, every inch the Dominion operative despite her injuries and torn clothing. His dog tags gleamed at her throat. Ready? They docked smoothly. Through the canopy, Nathan could see exactly what Meridian Control had warned about. Commander Parrish stood with a full security detail, weapons visible, expressions hard. "Here we go," Nathan muttered. He popped the canopy. They climbed out together, Sera moving stiffly but with dignity. Nathan stayed close to her side, ready to intervene if security made any aggressive moves. Parrish's expression was unreadable as they approached. "Hunt, Miss Vyn." His gaze tracked to the dog tags, then back to Nathan's face. "You've started a war." "The war was already coming," Nathan said. "We just made sure Earth knew about it. And brought a Dominion operative to an Earth defense installation. I brought the woman who saved your planet. Show some respect." Tension crackled through the bay. Security hands moved toward weapons. Sera's ears flattened, but she stood her ground. Parrish stared at Nathan for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. "Fair enough. You're both confined to quarters pending full debrief. Medical team will see to your injuries." He looked at Sera directly. "Thank you for the intelligence, Miss Vyn. Earth owes you a debt." Sera's ears lifted slightly in surprise. "You're welcome, Commander. Security will escort you to VIP quarters, not the brig," Parrish added, seeing Nathan tense. "You're not prisoners, but you're also not leaving this station until we sort out the political nightmare you've created." Nathan took Sera's good hand, lacing their fingers together. "We go together, same quarters." Parrish's eyebrow rose. He looked at their joined hands, at the dog tags around Sera's neck, at the way they stood together like they'd face down the entire security detail if necessary. "Together," Parrish agreed. "But Hunt, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about protocol." "Looking forward to it, sir." They followed security through the station, Sera's hand tight in Nathan's, the galaxy shifting around them, war coming on fast wings. But they were together, and for now that was enough. The VIP quarters were small but clean, designed for visiting officers. Security posted themselves outside while Nathan and Sera stepped inside, the door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. For a moment they just stood there in the sudden quiet. No alarms, no weapons fire, no pursuit, just silence and the low hum of station life support. Then Sera's legs gave out. Nathan caught her before she hit the floor, guiding her to the bed. She was shaking, the adrenaline finally wearing off, everything she'd held together for months coming apart now that they were safe. "I've got you," he said, sitting beside her and pulling her close. "You're safe now." "I killed people on that ship." Her voice was small, muffled against his chest. "I spent months lying, manipulating. I let them test me, hurt me, and I couldn't break cover. Not once." "You saved billions of people who'll never know your name." Nathan pressed his lips to the top of her head. "That's not something to come back from. That's something to survive." She lifted her head, amber eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. "I thought I'd die there. Thought the last thing I'd feel was your tags against my skin. And that would have to be enough." "It's not enough." Nathan cupped her face, thumbs stroking through soft fur. "I want decades with you. I want mornings waking up next to you. I want to argue about stupid things and laugh at terrible jokes and watch you do that thing with your ears when you're concentrating." "What thing?" "They twitch, it's adorable." Despite everything, she laughed. The sound was rough and broken, but genuine. Her good hand came up to cover his. "They're going to use us," she said, "as symbols, as proof that humans and other species can work together against the Kethran threat. Let them. As long as we're together, I don't care what narrative they build. Even if it means no quiet life. We'll find moments like this one." He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of everything they'd survived to reach this point. Her claws pricked gently through his flight suit as she held him, and when they broke apart, both breathing hard, something had shifted. The fear and uncertainty had given way to determination. A chime at the door. Medical team right on schedule. The next hour was clinical efficiency. Setting Sera's arm properly, treating her ribs, running scans to check for internal damage. Nathan's field kit had missed. They worked around him because he refused to leave her side, his hands staying in reach while they patched her up. When medical finally left, Sera looked better. Color had returned to her face and the pain medication had taken the edge off. She was wearing station-issue clothing now, soft and clean, though she'd refused to remove the dog tags even while they'd treated her. "Better?" Nathan asked. "Better." She settled back against the pillows, exhaustion pulling at her. "Stay with me?" "Not going anywhere." He kicked off his boots and stretched out beside her, careful of her injuries. She curled into him immediately, her good arm draped across his chest, her tail wrapping around his leg. The tags pressed between them, warm metal over both their hearts. "Tell me what happens next," she said quietly. "Parrish debriefs us. Earth mobilizes its defenses. The Dominion fractures. Some systems will stand with us. Some will try to appease the Kethran. Some will go dark and hope to be ignored." Nathan's fingers traced idle patterns on her back. "The galaxy chooses sides, and we prepare for war. And us? We heal, we rest, and then we do whatever we can to help." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm not letting you go back into deep cover, not alone." "I wasn't planning to." Sera lifted her head to look at him. "I'm done with solo operations. If I go anywhere dangerous, you're coming with me." "Deal." She smiled and settled back against him, breathing evening out as exhaustion finally claimed her. Nathan held her while she slept, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the peaceful expression on her face. Outside their quarters, the galaxy was shifting. Earth's defense networks were activating. Dominion systems were in chaos. Kethran forces were likely mobilizing for retaliation. But in this moment, in these quarters with the door sealed and security standing guard, they had peace. Hours later, Sera stirred against him. The station's lighting had shifted to night cycle, casting everything in soft blue. "Right here." She lifted her head, amber eyes catching the low light. Her hand came up to touch the dog tags, that gesture she made when centering herself. "I need to tell you something." "Okay." When they were testing me, running neural scans, mapping my brain chemistry, I learned something. She paused, gathering words. "The immunity isn't random. It's tied to specific neurological structures. Humans have it because of how your brains process individuality versus collective thinking. My species has it because we're naturally resistant to outside influence." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the Kethran are terrified of us, not because we can't be controlled, but because we prove their entire system is flawed." Her voice grew stronger. "They've built an empire on collective consciousness, on the idea that individual will is weakness. But humans and species like mine show that individuality can be stronger, more adaptable, more creative." Nathan processed that. So this isn't just about survival, it's ideological. It's existential. If the galaxy sees that immune individuals can resist and thrive, the entire Kethran power structure collapses. Sera's claws pricked gently through his shirt. "They're not trying to exterminate us out of hatred. They're doing it out of fear." "Then we use that fear against them." Nathan pulled her closer. "We show the galaxy what human ingenuity and alien brilliance can accomplish together. We prove that individuality wins." "Together," she said, touching the tags again. "Together." Morning came with Parrish at their door, ready for the debrief. They dressed, Sera moving easier now with proper medical treatment, and faced whatever came next as a unit. The debrief lasted hours. Parrish recorded everything: the crash, the data core, the Kethran collection program, Sera's sacrifice. He asked hard questions and accepted harder answers. When it was done, he looked at them both with something like respect. "Earth Command wants to meet you, both of you." He stood, gathering his notes. "They're calling you heroes. The intelligence community wants Sera for advisory. Military wants you for tactical planning hunt." "We work together or not at all," Nathan said. Parrish nodded like he'd expected nothing less. "I'll make sure they understand. You've earned that much." After he left, Sera moved to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Nathan joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. She leaned back into him, tail curving around his leg. "We did it," she said softly. "We did. The war's still coming." "It is." Nathan rested his chin on top of her head between her ears. But Earth knows, the galaxy knows, and we're ready. She turned in his arms, looking up at him with amber eyes that held everything they'd survived and everything they'd fight for. I love you, she said. I love you too. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Her hand found the dog tags at her throat, and she smiled. These are mine now, you know that, right? They were always yours, from the moment I put them around your neck. She kissed him then, deep and promising and full of futures they'd earned. Outside, the galaxy was preparing for war. Kethran forces were mobilizing. Earth was arming itself. But Nathan Hunt had shot down a warship and found the woman he loved wearing his tags in the wreckage. He'd exposed a conspiracy that would change the course of history. He'd stood against protocol and command to keep her by his side. And as Sera pressed closer, her claws gentle against his skin, her tail wrapped around him, he knew he'd do it all again without hesitation. Some things were worth fighting for. Some people were worth burning down the galaxy to protect. She was his, he was hers, and the Kethran would learn what it meant to threaten the woman wearing Nathan Hunt's dog tags. Together, they'd show the galaxy what happened when you underestimated human determination and alien brilliance. Together they'd win,